Hello everyone and welcome back to Planet Coaster. We will be working on something a little bit more Elite Dangerous specifically themed this episode. You'll see we're using the custom shapes here, trying to get this slightly swept wing design, and this is the look of the F-63 Condor. This is a very small fighter in Elite Dangerous. It is the Federation's fighter, and they are relatively quick, nimble, lightly armored type of thing, and we are actually building this not even really close to full scale. Now normally a person would be able to fit in one of these. This is actually a lot smaller than that, and that's because one, it's fine to keep the theme park a little campy, a little bit, less so than real life, so that we can get past and possibly make it look like an actual theme park instead of just like the game. I wanted to try and find a window here that would actually work for the cockpit, but nothing was really small enough to do that. We also will end up adding some thruster effects to some specially placed one in the sky, and in how I envision these vehicles to be made are they're like inflatable kind of Zeppelin-y balloons that are just anchored into the ground, and they just kind of hover in the sky, and that way you can kind of in your mind get them to work. In fact, we'll even build some tethers to hold these down. The wooden block here is actually kind of the cockpit effect, and you can see how much smaller it is than I guess. It's actually probably about the size, I think it only comes up to like their waist or something. It's a very small little object. You can put them in little fleets, and they do look pretty cool, kind of grouped together around. Now, the main bulk of this episode is building this. This is going to be the skin for the flat ride, and obviously, because this is the wild blue flat ride, which is a kind of a standard pole type of element that you rotate around it in your seat, but the additional effect is that you have these little wings, and depending on how you work the wings, you can actually roll in the air independently, besides the natural swinging motion of the main ride. So I figured those could be kind of close enough to possibly an F-63 because they're such a small little winged vehicles, and I thought maybe doing something F-63 themed, landing kind of pad themed, would be a little bit more proper than really anything else that I could think of. And so there's basically two sections to this build. There is the section we're working on now, which is kind of a it's not a docking port or anything like that. It's not like the underside of the hangar bays that are in Elite Dangerous. This is actually more something on the surface, because these light fighters, these versions of the F-63, in my head, they're almost like drones. They're way smaller and possibly closer to the level of a skimmer. And what you'll be able to do is actually park these just on the surface so that they can just be launched, moved over to the next section, which is actually kind of their launching point. These are based off kind of Elite Dangerous landing pads, though. They have the kind of the angled little control areas and control towers that you'll see in Elite Dangerous when you come down to land at outpost stations and things. It's a very much a standard sight if you guys do play this game at all. And in fact, if you don't play this game, I do recommend it. I think it's a great sandbox kind of space simulation game. Still lacking a little depth, but I don't really want to get into the shortcomings of Elite Dangerous here. But I do want to get into just building and making the two Frontier games that are currently out, work together and actually coexist. And I think that's probably something that you guys hopefully appreciate in the long run. Now, we're actually not done with the slum area, which is kind of a shame. This actually took a lot longer than I thought it would. It's a much larger structure than I was planning, but oh well, it is a highly detailed structure at least, and it is built up on a little bit of a hill, so it doesn't really have a standard sizing beyond just being able to wrap around the wild blue. And on the workshop, I do plan on uploading it there if you guys want to try and check it out for your own parks. But do be careful that it's fitting my specific landscape, so it's not going to be 100% perfect for your guys' park. You're going to have to find a kind of a niche spot for it. But you could also just hide a lot of the vertical walls on a flat piece of ground, or possibly add on to it. I don't care. If you want to do that and possibly add additional detail that I'm not even going into, then that's highly encouraged. Go ahead and make something your own and enjoy the foundation that I might be providing you. Why not? Now, you saw that for a second there. There's some new wires and things like that have been added into the game, which is going to be great for getting that clutter kind of above your characters on the path over in the normal area that we have going. And I think that'll be great. Here, we're trying to find some pieces to fill in these little gaps, just so we can get the actual frame as flush as possible to the ride, and that way when people try to line this up again later, they'll be able to actually do so with some accuracy to the placement, and that way things are lining up basically how they should be. Though it's a lot of gray, it's a lot of these thin metal pieces which without the ride look very weird, and they overlay a little bit. They're not 100% right, but this is ride skins anyways. Like the last Elite Dangerous ride skin that I made kind of had the same problem, though luckily it had just a square base and the grid roughly lined up well enough to make that easy. This element here, this is actually kind of the arrow indicating that you can launch or where you're landing from, depending, and this actually kind of folds and raises depending if you're docked at the station taking off or landing, and usually it sits at about a 45-degree angle, and then it might go down to like a 20-degree angle when you're landing or taking off. That way it's just not in the way of your ship. I figured that'd be a fun little element to add. The landing pads also have these small little, they're almost like mediums, but out of metal that you would see on like a highway, and they just kind of mark the border almost like a normal low wall fence would do, and they look pretty cool. You just color them orange, put some railings around, maybe some lights. This side here is going to have some additional piping and also some more panels, just to make an additional layer come out on the surface. So you can see, just because of how big the structure is, adding layers onto it and adding things like that, it's a big surface area to cover. And it just takes time. That's just about all I can say with Planet Coaster. If you guys are struggling with your own builds or things like that, if you don't have time, I recommend just going to the workshop and having fun making a park. But if you do have time, go ahead and take the time to make something fun that you wanted to make, whether it's recreation from like a game like we're doing now, or from a movie, or reference photos, or something from your head. If you want to do that, maybe starting off, I would recommend making copies of things, just so it makes it a little bit easier for you. And then as you build your visual library of reference material that you can call on later for your own builds, then move into making your own stuff. Like, I mean, shoot, I'm looking at a reference from the game right now, trying to match some of the elements, at least get some of the key pieces. Like this is the like control tower kind of area, kind of the command module of this landing pad, where there's some angled windows on top and then a flat section with more windows, possibly even some bins and tankers along the docking pad itself for easy refueling, pipes. All this stuff is in Elite Dangerous, so it's really easy for me to just kind of throw it in there in areas. Now it just takes time, as I said, and when you do this for about 4 hours after work, it's a little tiring. Oh well, not that bad. But hopefully after next episode, we'll be working on the tram and getting that station built, and then we'll be done with the slums area. So we just have basically a little ride, some shops to add, and then a whole bunch of trash details. The slums will then be complete. Then we can start working on the very high-tech areas and the main bulk of the park, which is actually, I think what I'm going to do is try and build something that looks from the engineers rather than a normal spaceport that's just on the surface, because those things are a little bit more unique. They're a little bit more standard sci-fi looking rather than the standard boxiness that you'd get out of a standard outpost. These ones have more of the orbs, domes, and rounder elements mixed into the boxy elements, and walkways, major struts holding up additions and things like that. So that's why we want to do something a little bit more unique than just more boxy structures that we have here. And hopefully you guys enjoy that once we get to that element. Now, they did fix a lot of my major bugs that I was having in the previous betas. So right now, to me, Elise is looking pretty good. And if you guys want to get it, it does come out, well, I guess at the time of recording this video, it's not out yet, but it comes out today that you're watching the video, and it is on Steam. Check it out. It is a great game. In my opinion, it's my game of the year, and it's just, I'm just glad we're getting the reinvention of Roller Coaster Tycoon and all those great classics. So this is all we got in the speed build section today. We're going to go ahead and kick it over to real time so that you guys can take a look at everything at a little bit of a slower pace. Alright, so here we are with the pretty much fully colored. It's probably missing some details, but I'm just going to go ahead and upload it to the workshop as is. And we can take a look at pretty much all the elements at this point. Our main ride, the wild blue here, you can see, plays some pretty crazy, goes around on this giant arm. The people are in control basically of the wings, and that allows them to catch some air resistance and spin them. If they control it correctly, we are making money. That's a good sign, at least. Here is our queue, and it basically goes through this little hangar that's above ground that stores all of our F-63 Condors. Now, these are way smaller, as I said in the speed build section. You can see they're just tiny little things. But luckily, because they're tiny, when they're up in the air with tethers, they kind of look like they're actually a little bit farther away, and they look pretty cool. Just looking up through the buildings, you can see these Condors up there. Now, I did add these metal wires here to make them look a little bit more fake and actually stationed up there, and I think that turns out pretty well. If you guys want, I can remove them, but I kind of like the concept of keeping the place looking a little campy and a little bit like a theme park. I could also add some more of these around if you guys want, and maybe get a patrol line kind of going through the area of these so that they have something to look at from below down there. But yeah, other than this kind of little add-on here, we got some kind of control center in this section. There are some helmets now in the game as a little decorative shelving piece, which is pretty cool. I believe also they are for sale, yes, in the hat shop. So people are running around with little sci-fi helmets, which is pretty cool to see in our sci-fi park. Though, maybe, can we actually just get rid of the other hats? Let's see. No, you can't. What's the problem here? Busy. Okay, too busy. Anyways, other than that, we got large storage containers kind of just up on the side, some additional clutter, things like that along here. Here is the ramp that goes up or down depending if you're landing or taking off or already landed. We got some miscellaneous frames over here by this vat of acid-like material, some type of bio processing plant thing, I guess. We got some pipings going from here all the way around, an additional hazard kind of pathway over those into our larger refinery buildings. This here is the main kind of launch control structure with plenty of lights as the people spin around here. Colored it kind of our yellowy, orange, red colors that are basically being implanted along through the slums. You know, this isn't the most pretty building in general. It's just kind of thrown together, which kind of hopefully fits with everything else. And other than that, that is pretty much it for today's episode. So if you guys enjoy Planet Coaster, feel free to leave a like so I know you want to see some more. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel, or if you're new and you want to see how all of this glorious stuff was built, and other things were built on my channel as well. And leave a comment down below what you think, what you might want to add, change, and I will see you guys